Greg Ehrenberg here with Adam Scherer. It's time for another week, and now NBA really taking the focus. Football season is over. The Super Bowl has been finished, and I assume we're going to start to see some bigger contests posted on FanDuel and DraftKings, as is DK tonight. They've posted a $4 contest with $100,000 to first place. Usually not the case, and I'm sure that's something that is a little bit influenced by the NBA. So you're going to want to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you guys have any questions at all, leave in the comment section below. We're going to be doing these NBA injury reports every day for the foreseeable future, so help support our content. Something else that just happened, Adam, literally just as we were about to record. Giannis Antetokounmpo, he was listed as probable, downgraded to doubtful. So I want to start by talking about him. We've seen this situation, a few times over the last few years. When Giannis doesn't end up playing, we know Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton see big usage increases. But this is also a really strong matchup against the Portland Trailblazers, maybe even too strong. There's a little bit of blowout risk here. What do you make of the Bucks without Giannis today?
Yeah, I think you see increased production from all of Holiday, Middleton, and Portis. But also you potentially get some value here because in addition to Giannis being out, you also have Pat Connaughton out. You have DiVincenzo no longer on the team. Serge Ibaka could be debuting today, but I don't think it's particularly likely that he plays like a lot of minutes alongside Portis. He could, I guess, but I think there's a decent chance that you see enough playing time from Jordan Nwora at 3K to maybe be a viable option. No guarantees there because again, we don't know exactly how they're going to use Ibaka. I think a lot will probably be answered by the starting lineup. Like if Ibaka starts alongside Portis, clearly it's an indication that you're going to get some run with Ibaka alongside Portis. But if you were to get like Jordan Nwora in the starting lineup, for example, then at 3K he becomes probably the best value play on the slate.
Yeah, and then, of course, big usage bumps going to Drew Holiday and Chris Middleton. One other thing I will note on the potential blowout risk is with Giannis out, we've got a new spread for this game. It went from being a 15.5-point spread to 11 points, so it definitely does reduce the blowout risk to some extent, even though the Portland Trailblazers team right now is definitely still crappy. But moving on, we have the rest of the injuries that we knew about before we were starting this, but SGA, he's been out for an extended period of time for OKC, but now Lu Dort is also out due to a shoulder injury. How do you see OKC handling the minutes without these guys, especially when you consider that it looks like they're going to try to limit Josh Giddey's minutes for the time being?
Yeah, to some extent, I think they kind of just throw darts at a dartboard, but at the same time, I think it solidifies the playing time that we've been seeing for Trey Mann. He's 4,300, makes him look decent, but Ty Jerome at 3,200 is cheap enough. I certainly want to be taking some shots at him. We know he's a good point per minute guy when he's out there. The matchup against the Knicks isn't particularly appealing, but if he gets 26 to 28 minutes at 3,200, he's going to look like a really good value. You do have Aaron Wiggins back, so he's just another body that potentially cuts into playing time and ends up being a problem. But I think there's a good chance that Ty Jerome at 3,200 ends up working out pretty well.
Yeah, and on the other side of the game, the Knicks are dealing with injuries of their own. RJ Barrett, he's out because he hurt his ankle in a game they really had no business being in. But Tibbs being Tibbs, the Knicks are down like 30 points in the fourth quarter. There's 4 minutes left in the game, and RJ Barrett's out on the court. What happens? He ends up getting hurt. So he remains out. In addition, Cam Reddish, who hasn't really been part of the Knicks rotation, but somebody who could play minutes with Barrett out, but he's questionable. Mitchell Robinson is questionable. Nerlens Noel is questionable. A lot of potential pieces missing from the Knicks. What stands out to you the most from a potential value standpoint?
So in terms of just point per dollar value, you have Quentin Grimes at 3K flat. He played about 36 to 37 minutes last game. He played 31 minutes 2 games ago without Barrett. He's not a great fantasy producer, but he averages about 0.7 fantasy points per minute. If you're going to get 30 plus minutes from him, he's just going to look like a pretty solid value. He is someone that I think the interest level in him decreases as more value opens up. For example, if Jordan Nwora is starting at 3K and Quentin Grimes is starting at 3K, Jordan Nwora 7 out of 7 days. Like he's just the better point per dollar guy, but still a good value. You also get increased usage for Kemba Walker. He hasn't closed either of the games that Barrett has been out, but he did play in the fourth quarter last game, which allowed him to get up to 26 minutes. He's still pretty cheap, has about a 23.5% usage rate without Barrett on the floor this year. So at the very least, an increased ceiling for him. Julius Randle has about a 30% usage rate without Barrett. So an increased ceiling for him. And then you also can take shots. I think you have a $4,800 Alec Burks. He's closed both games in place of Kemba Walker. He's not a great fantasy option. I don't think he's, great here, but he does get increased playing time most likely. And then if you really wanted to try and leverage against the field, particularly like in that DraftKings tournament that you mentioned, where you have almost 120,000 entries at the $4 price point, you're going to get ownership going to Quentin Grimes at 3K. We've seen him play a lot of minutes, close the last couple of games. There is a non-zero chance in any given game that Emmanuel quickly plays well and is on the floor to close in place of Grimes. I think especially in a game like this where there's nobody on Oklahoma City that you really are worried about offensively. So I think it kind of increases the likelihood that down the stretch, maybe the Knicks go with a more offensive-minded lineup and go to quickly over Grimes. So, again, like from a probabilistic standpoint, Grimes is more likely to close and more likely to, beat Emmanuel quickly just based on playing time. But the potential payouts, if you have quickly at 1/50th of the ownership of Grimes, and he does happen to be in the closing lineup, are very, very high.
Yeah, and quickly is the better points per minute producer of the two. It's just the minutes are always difficult to nail down in a Tom Thibodeau rotation, but for tournament purpose, it makes sense to go to where there might be more variance and potential more upside, especially if the field isn't there. If you guys have not checked out Yahoo Daily Fantasy Sports, you should definitely be doing it. They run great contests. They have low management fees, which is the equivalent of lower management fees compared to most other sites in the industry. Something else also, if you sign up for the first time using the link in the description box below, head on over to Yahoo, make a deposit, enter a contest. You get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, especially if you're somebody who was maybe just primarily an NFL DFS player looking to play NBA now. This is a really good thing to take advantage of, because you'll find our ownership projections, our player projections, boom bust tool, everything else you need to build winning NBA DFS lineups. Really good way to get access to our tools, really for close to nothing. You just put a few dollars into Yahoo, make that deposit, enter a contest, 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Really good value. All right, moving on with the rest of the injury report here. Rudy Gobert, he's been listed as questionable quite a bit as of late, but I think this is the time that he's finally going to return. He's been dealing with that calf injury, but he said himself that he's getting close to a return. Adam, Gobert is questionable, and let's assume that he is back in the mix for Utah today. How does that impact some of the other guys we've gotten to recently?
So it pretty much, I think, takes the Whiteside and for sure Azubuike plays off the table. Whiteside backing up Gobert is much different than backing up Azubuike, because you're not projecting Gobert to start and only play 20 to 22 minutes like you would be otherwise. So it creates a situation where Gobert, I think, is pretty much correctly priced. It wouldn't be surprising if he was a little bit limited, maybe played like 28 to 30 minutes instead of 32 to 33. It is a good matchup for him. So it's a spot where I wouldn't be prioritizing him, but in tournaments, he still has a ceiling, but it makes it very, very difficult to get to Whiteside. Whereas if Gobert is ruled out, you can just go right back to $5,900 Whiteside and expect him to put up a big game against Houston.
The next situation, it's one that I'm pretty interested to get your take on, because it's something I've struggled with the right guys to really approach here. But the Denver Nuggets, Monte Morris and Zeke Naji are both questionable. We've seen Monte Morris miss the last couple of games. Bones Highland started in his place, which for me, the first game Bones Highland started, I understand he was chalk, and I played a bunch of them. A lot of people did, and just the minutes weren't really there. In fact, he played less minutes as a starter with Monte Morris out than he'd played in games where Monte Morris was active, which was pretty befuddling to me. But how are you going to be handling the situation if Monte Morris sits again? Because the minutes and the production between Campazzo and Highland, it just hasn't really broken out like I thought it was going to.
Yeah, it creates an interesting situation because you're basically getting 48 minutes split between Highland and Campazzo to some extent, depending on how they're playing. Like you said in the first game, you got close to 30 minutes from Campazzo. You got like 18 from Highland. Last game was basically a 24-24 split. But the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that Highland's per minute production is lower as a starter, as you would expect. When you see a high usage guy that, his role off the bench is as a creator and someone that brings scoring to that second unit. When you throw him into the starting lineup alongside Nikola Jokic, who is dominating every stat, and alongside someone like Will Barton that also can create, it's going to take production away from Highland. So you're getting potentially more minutes, but also lower production. He's still cheap enough and in a good matchup where I'm certainly interested if he's starting. But at the same time, Campazzo, I think you can expect to play at least 20 minutes, if not more. We've seen, like I said, 30 and 24 minutes. So I'm not necessarily projecting a straight up 24-24 split, but even if you were to do something like 26-22 or 25-23 or something like that, I don't want them together, but they're both viable value options if Morris is out.
And now let's finish by talking about the Chicago Bulls, a team that's really limping into the All-Star break. It's just one guy going down after another. So the most recent player, Zach LaVine, he's out for the next couple of games, probably isn't going to be playing until sometime after the All-Star break. So no Zach LaVine. That comes in addition to Alex Caruso has been out, Lonzo Ball has been out, and then Javonte Green is questionable. So we've seen both Vooch and DeRozan get priced up quite a bit, but do you think there's still upside in them at their salaries?
Yeah, I do, because for one, the matchup is appealing. You're talking about a very fast-paced San Antonio team, but you're also having their minutes staggered, which is beneficial for both of them. Overall, this year, without LaVine on the floor, DeRozan and Vooch are both averaging around 1.3 DraftKings points per minute. Vooch's usage rate is around 30%. DeRozan's at like 36%. So I think getting to both of them is still pretty appealing. They both have very high ceilings. One thing with Vooch that'll be interesting is as more value opens up, I think Vooch actually kind of becomes less interesting. And the reason is just that you have Nikola Jokic as, just a ridiculously good play at center. Whereas if value is tighter, like it was this morning, I'd be more inclined to say, okay, I'll take my 55 to 60 from Vooch. And, as long as Jokic doesn't go for 80 or 85, I should be okay. As more value opens up, it's just a little bit easier to get the Jokic, but Vooch still will look really good. DeRozan will look really good. And then, the Kobe White, Dosunmu pieces, they should play a lot of minutes. We've seen plenty of assist opportunities for Dosunmu, which makes him look okay. Kobe White's kind of scary to me because the playing time at a 6K price tag is really nice. But the issue, and Lofty and I talked about it a lot this morning, I'm always hesitant to go to popular players that you're not expecting to be like top 2 or 3 on the team in usage or in assists or in rebounding. You're kind of just playing like a 20% on guy that you're just banking on him being on the floor long enough for him to kind of accidentally pick up enough stats to be a good play. So I am a little concerned there as long as the ownership's high, but he still looks fine just based on playing time.
That is going to do it for the NBA injury report today. Do us a favor, guys. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comment section below. I'll be circling back and answering those later on in the day.